When a woman sees that you've moved on peacefully, the first and most profound psychological response she experiences is an emotional shift, often coupled with deep inner reflection. This response is not random. It is rooted in fundamental human psychology and attachment behaviors. Humans are wired to react to changes in their social environment, and women in particular are highly attuned to emotional cues in the people around them. When a woman once emotionally connected to you realizes that you are no longer invested in conflict, anger, or the dynamics of the past, it forces her to confront a new reality, a reality where she is no longer central to your emotional world in the way she once assumed. This realization initially triggers a range of emotions. She might feel confusion, surprise, or even a subtle pang of loss. The confusion comes from the fact that her previous expectations about your behavior, whether they were attention-seeking, controlling, or affectionate, are no longer valid. She might have unconsciously relied on your reactions as a mirror to her own value, and seeing you detached peacefully disrupts that mirror. The loss she feels is not necessarily about romantic attachment alone. It is also about the loss of influence, the loss of emotional control she may have assumed, and the loss of the certainty that your life still revolved around her presence. As this emotional shift settles in, her mind naturally turns toward introspection. Women tend to process relationships on both an emotional and analytical level, and witnessing your peaceful detachment triggers both. She begins to reflect on past interactions, examining the nuances of your shared experiences with new eyes. Questions may arise such as, did I take him for granted? Or was there a way I could have handled things differently? This is not manipulation or scheming. It is the mind's natural process of making sense of change. Your calm departure from the emotional tug of war forces her to acknowledge the aspects of the past that she may have overlooked, dismissed, or misunderstood. During this introspective phase, she may also experience a mix of admiration and curiosity. Observing someone move forward with dignity and peace is inherently magnetic. It demonstrates emotional maturity and stability, qualities that are universally respected. She notices that you are not reacting out of anger, jealousy, or desperation. Instead, you are simply allowing life to progress, focusing on growth, goals, and personal happiness. Female psychology shows that women are particularly responsive to emotional consistency. The act of moving on without drama creates a silent demonstration of your self-worth. And this contrast can make her reassess both her perception of you and her own emotional strategies. This keynote also highlights the importance of self-respect and personal boundaries in human relationships. Women intuitively recognize when someone values themselves enough not to be drawn into unnecessary conflict. By moving on peacefully, you are signaling that your life does not revolve around the need for validation from her or anyone else. Psychologically, this creates a cognitive dissonance for her. The person she once believed could be influenced by her emotional engagement is now showing strength, calmness, and independence. This emotional shift forces her to reflect on her own behavior and approach. She may ask herself, often unconsciously, questions like, how did he manage to let go without bitterness? Or what makes him so composed despite everything that happened? These questions are part of the inner reflection process that can lead to personal growth. Another critical aspect of this keynote is that it touches on regret and missed opportunities. While not all women will experience regret, the awareness of your peaceful detachment can naturally trigger thoughts about what could have been different. She may recognize qualities in you that she once underestimated: your patience, emotional resilience, and ability to prioritize personal growth. This is not about manipulating emotions. It is about understanding the natural human response to someone demonstrating emotional strength. The peaceful manner in which you move forward highlights the contrast between emotional maturity and reactive attachment. It subtly teaches lessons about respect, boundaries, and the value of calm composure in relationships. Moreover, this emotional shift often leads to a re-evaluation of priorities on her part. Women observing your life from a distance may begin to notice that your happiness and fulfillment are no longer contingent upon her actions or approval. This realization can spark a period of self-reflection where she considers not just the relationship you shared, but also her own emotional patterns, decisions, and expectations. The psychological effect is subtle but powerful. Peaceful detachment prompts her to question assumptions, rethink strategies, and even consider personal growth in areas she might have neglected. Finally, the beauty of this emotional shift lies in its transformative power. By simply moving on with peace and integrity, you set in motion a chain of cognitive and emotional processes within her mind. She is forced to confront the reality that life moves on, that emotional security is attractive, and that respect is earned through consistency and self-discipline, not manipulation or drama. Your calm progression becomes an educational experience for whether she realizes it consciously or not. It demonstrates that emotional strength, self-respect, and peaceful detachment are not just desirable traits, they are transformative forces that can profoundly affect how others perceive and relate to you. In conclusion, the emotional shift and inner reflection a woman experiences when she sees you move on peacefully are multi-layered. It is a complex interplay of surprise, introspection, admiration, curiosity, and self-evaluation. It underscores the fundamental truth of human psychology. True emotional strength is observed and respected, often more powerfully than words or declarations ever could. By embodying peace, maturity, and resilience, you create a subtle but undeniable psychological impact, one that encourages her to reflect deeply on herself, her actions, and the value of emotional intelligence in relationships. This keynote is a masterclass in how silent strength and calm detachment speak louder than any confrontation or drama ever could. One of the most transformative psychological effects a woman experiences when she sees that you've moved on peacefully is the recognition of your self-control and calmness. This is not merely about avoiding conflict, it's about demonstrating a level of emotional mastery that communicates stability, confidence, and inner strength. Women, like men, are deeply perceptive of behavioral cues, and they subconsciously measure emotional resilience when evaluating the quality of a person's character. Calmness, particularly in situations where emotional stakes were high, is not something that can be feigned easily. It must come from genuine self-awareness and personal discipline. Observing this quality triggers a cascade of cognitive and emotional responses in her mind, which profoundly influences how she perceives you. Self-control is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence. When a woman notices that you are not reacting impulsively, lashing out, or seeking revenge after a breakup or conflict, it signals that you are capable of managing your emotions responsibly. Female psychology suggests that women are naturally drawn to stability and consistency because these traits signal reliability, safety, and predictability in social and romantic relationships. By moving on peacefully, you demonstrate that your emotional state is not dependent on her behavior or attention. This kind of calm composure challenges her expectations. Often, she may have anticipated that you would show frustration, sadness, or even desperation. The fact that you do not gives her pause and subtly shifts her perspective. She begins to see you as someone who values self-respect over immediate emotional gratification, which is a highly attractive quality on a psychological level. Your calmness also communicates confidence in your own identity. Women notice when a man has a strong sense of self and is not defined by external validation. When you move forward without drama, she perceives that you are emotionally independent and secure. This sends a powerful signal you are not dependent on her approval to feel worthy or complete. Her female psychology indicates that emotional independence is one of the most respected traits because it conveys maturity. A woman observing this may feel a complex mixture of admiration and intrigue. She starts to recognize that the person she once knew as reactive or emotionally available is now someone who prioritizes personal growth, mental peace, and stability over transient emotional reactions. Moreover, calmness in this context functions as a mirror for reflection. By observing your serene response to what might have been a highly charged emotional situation, she begins to evaluate her own behavior and emotional tendencies. Women, like men, respond strongly to contrasts in emotional behavior. When you move forward without drama, it creates a stark contrast with the turmoil she may have expected or even created. This contrast triggers introspection. She may ask herself why you can remain composed when she could not, or why your life appears unaffected while she is still processing emotions. This self-reflection can lead to an awakening of respect and an understanding of emotional maturity that goes beyond mere attraction. Self-control also conveys respect for both yourself and others. It is a subtle yet powerful signal that you are unwilling to engage in unnecessary conflict, gossip, or manipulation. Women are often highly attuned to these dynamics, and when they see a man conducting himself with dignity, it becomes impossible to ignore. The absence of overaction communicates that you value peace and understand the futility of drama. Psychologically, this creates a sense of admiration. Even if she once held influence over you, she realizes that influence no longer works through emotional manipulation because you have established clear personal boundaries. Your calmness silently teaches her that respect is earned, not demanded. Another key aspect is the magnetic effect of composure. Calmness and self can generate curiosity and even subconscious attraction. Women may find themselves wondering how you maintain such serenity, especially in emotionally charged situations. Your ability to remain peaceful while navigating past conflicts or heartbreak acts as a psychological signal of strength. This is rooted in evolutionary psychologies. Humans are naturally drawn to partners who can manage stress, maintain stability, and demonstrate resilience under pressure. By exhibiting calmness, you not only elevate your own mental state, but also create an environment where she is compelled to notice, evaluate, and perhaps even admire your behavioral mastery. Additionally, calmness triggers personal accountability and learning in her. When a woman observes that you have moved forward without bitterness, it highlights her own emotional tendencies. She may realize that she allowed emotions to control her actions, whereas you demonstrated restraint and self-awareness. This reflection is educational by nature. It allows her to reconsider how emotional maturity plays a role in relationships and life in general. By witnessing your peaceful composure, she is indirectly learning the value of emotional discipline and the power of measured responses. Finally, the power of self-control and calmness extends beyond immediate attraction or respect. It leaves a lasting impression. Emotional stability is memorable, especially in situations where conflict or tension could have easily led to drama. By remaining composed, you not only preserve your peace, but also create a psychological imprint in her mind. She associates you with strength, integrity, and emotional intelligence, qualities that are universally respected and difficult to ignore. Over time, this can subtly shift her perspective, prompting admiration, self-reflection, and a deepened understanding of emotional balance. In conclusion, the power of self-control and calmness is a transformative force in human relationships, particularly in how a woman perceives you after a breakup or conflict. By moving forward peacefully, you demonstrate emotional intelligence, inner strength, and personal integrity. These qualities trigger admiration, introspection, and even subconscious attraction in her mind. Calmness is more than the absence of reaction. It is a strategic display of maturity, respect, and stability. Female psychology confirms that observing such composure creates a powerful emotional impact, reshaping how she thinks, feels, and evaluates both you and herself. In essence, your serenity becomes a silent but profound lesson in emotional mastery, respect, and human psychology, a lesson that she cannot ignore and one that leaves a lasting impression long after words are no longer spoken. One of the most intriguing psychological phenomena that occurs when a woman sees that you've moved on peacefully is a shift in her mindset from control to observation. This is not an immediate reaction, rather it develops gradually as she processes the reality of your calm detachment. Women, like men, are highly attuned to relational dynamics, and when those dynamics change, especially in ways that challenge their expectations, it naturally alters their cognitive and emotional approach. The transition from attempting to control your emotions or behaviors to simply observing them is a subtle yet powerful shift, and understanding this process provides deep insights into female psychology. When a woman once emotionally engaged with you notices that you are no longer seeking her attention or validation, it disrupts her usual relational strategies. Often, women unconsciously exert a form of emotional influence, whether through communication, behavior, or subtle social cues to maintain closeness or attention. This is a natural aspect of human attachment. We tend to seek emotional connections and strive to preserve bonds. However, when she sees that you are no longer responding to these efforts because you have moved forward with dignity and composure, the balance of control begins to shift. She may initially feel uncertainty or even frustration, but over time, this gives way to observation. She starts to watch rather than act, trying to understand the new dynamics that are at play. The first stage of this shift is cognitive recalibration. Her mind begins to take stock of what she is witnessing. Instead of expecting predictable emotional reactions from you, she now notices a pattern of consistency, calmness, and self-reliance. Female psychology reveals that women are particularly perceptive to behavior patterns. They often evaluate others based on the reliability of their emotional responses. Observing your peaceful detachment challenges her assumptions and forces her to reconsider how she interpreted your behavior in the past. She starts asking herself questions like, Why isn't he reacting the way I expected? Or how does he remain so composed despite everything that happened? These reflections are not merely curiosity. They are part of an internal learning process where she begins to reassess the dynamics of influence, control, and emotional power. As this cognitive recalibration progresses, a woman naturally enters the phase of emotional observation. Instead of attempting to provoke, manipulate, or regain control over your feelings, she becomes an observer of your life from a distance. This observational stance allows her to study your behaviors, reactions, and choices without direct interference. Psychologically, this is significant because it demonstrates a recognition that emotional influence is no longer possible in the same way it once was. Your peaceful movement forward communicates strength and independence, and this forces her to acknowledge that her previous strategies, whether subtle or overt, cannot compel or coerce your attention. In essence, her role shifts from participant to spectator, and this subtle shift in perspective is both educational and revealing. The observational phase is often accompanied by a mixture of admiration, curiosity, and introspection. Women begin to notice not only your actions, but also the quality of your emotional responses. They see that you are not acting out of anger, bitterness, or desperation. Rather, you are acting out of self-respect and clarity. Female psychology shows that this contrast is compelling. Someone